Hi everybody, thank you for watching this video and thank you for watching some of the videos of the past. We wanted to bring a video today because we know that some of you have probably noticed over the past few weeks as we've been doing these videos, there hasn't been a lot of Lisa in them. A big reason for that is that Lisa is unfortunately working, or fortunately working. So while the girls and I get to run off and have some adventures, she's stuck at home. However, more recently, there have been some health concerns, which is why Lisa hasn't been in some of the videos, and that's actually what we wanted to talk to you today about. All you, honey.
All right, here we go. So as most of you know, back in April, I was having some difficulty breathing, and we had gone to the emergency room and we found out that I had a blood clot in my leg that then had traveled to both of my lungs. So I was in the hospital for a good week and taken off of my maintenance drug that I was on after going through breast cancer back in 2018 and placed on some blood thinner medication. In June, I went for my annual mammogram and everything came back clear. However, I was experiencing some rib pain right below the right breast area where I had the breast cancer previously. So in June, I had gone back to my breast surgeon office and shared my concern. And they said, you know, it could be due to the radiation, it could be due to the chemo that you had, even though it was a year ago. We're going to give you some ibuprofen, but don't take too much because of the blood thinner. And within a week, come back and let's see how it is. So, of course, it did not get any better, and I had gone back. And the doctor came in and pressed on my rib, and I about wanted to punch him in the face because it hurt so bad. So right away, they ordered an x-ray. Had the x-ray done, and within a day, you know, the x-ray results came back and everything was clear. So they ordered a CT scan. With the CT scan, there were lymph nodes that were found on both of my lungs. So there were lymph nodes on both of my lungs, and they sent the information to my oncologist's office. So the breast surgeon called that day and said, you know, we've sent it to your oncologist's office, they're reviewing it, but from what we're seeing, it looks like that your breast cancer may have spread. So as you can imagine, receiving that news, it was a little overwhelming. But we tried not to rush to any conclusions until we heard from the oncologist office. So we met with Dr. Kunta, who I've been seeing from my previous experience, and he had told us not to compare it with our previous CT scan, and that's what they were doing because when I was in the hospital with the blood clots, that's what they were looking for. They weren't looking for anything else. So it was hard to do a compare. But for just overall concerns, he wanted to do a PET scan. So he ordered a stat PET scan, and we went to have that done. And mind you, this was all within like a week of being done. So my arm was a little bruised. Lots of needles being poked in one location. We also were told to go see a pulmonologist just for him to review the CT scan, and then once the PET scan came back.
Bless you. Bless you,
Bella. So we then got the PET scan results, and with those results, Dr. Kunta ordered an MRI as well because there were some spots also on my pancreas, or a hot spot. When you do a PET scan, it comes across as hot spots. And so the hot spots on the lung showed, but they also showed within my L1 and L2, which is the spine and then the femur bone. So literally the next day we did an MRI and we awaited those results. In the meantime, we had seen a pulmonologist. He didn't seem overly concerned that it was lung cancer or anything of that nature. So because I was getting a bone biopsy, he wanted to hold off doing the biopsy of the lung. This past Friday, obviously it's been a little bit of a waiting game. We had the MRI. The good news is the MRI did come back and the pancreas came back negative. So that was really good news, that we knew it wasn't in the pancreas. We did have to get the bone biopsy done, which is supposed to be an outpatient procedure.
Supposed to be.
Supposed to be.
You're supposed to go in for a little bit and then leave and not come back.
And they normally do it in the morning. And they had scheduled it for September 1st, but Dr. Kunta was not happy with that and wanted it done as soon as possible. So because they kind of put me into a spot, it was later in the afternoon. So you do have to fast for that. And so the night before, that Wednesday night, you have to stop eating and drinking. And the procedure wasn't until 1 o'clock. So Chris and the girls had dropped me off, and I went in to get prepped. And of course they were having a bunch of issues with getting the needle in my arm because, well, it was pretty bruised from all the other PET scans, CT scans, etc. So Dr. Kunta did approve to use my port, which was amazing and a blessing. Had the bone biopsy. Chris was there through recovery, and when after it was like 30 minutes, we had to walk around a little bit, and I felt pretty good. A little lightheaded, but other than that, felt pretty good. So we got in the car and came home, and Jasmine helped me up the stairs. And I was just thirsty and hungry. At that point, it was almost 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going to get some water and a granola bar. And Kathy was here because she was watching the girls. And I looked at her and just said, my gosh, I don't feel so good. I feel a little dizzy. I feel like I'm going to get sick. And I leaned over into the kitchen sink, and that was pretty much the last thing I remembered because I blacked out, I guess, and landed on my head in the kitchen.
Yeah. I was sitting actually in that seat right there, and we ended up calling 911. The paramedics came, the EMTs came. Lisa fell and hit her head pretty much smack on the floor. Thankfully, she didn't hit a corner. She didn't hit the stove, anything like that. But they were here. They were able to stabilize her. She was probably out unconscious for maybe a good 15 seconds. It felt much longer than that, but it really wasn't that long. And then it probably took another, 5 to 10 minutes for her to really come around and be able to talk again. The paramedics came in, did a fantastic job. They were here within 2 to 3 minutes, which was great. She had a really big bump on the back of her head, and the only funny part through most of this is her telling me I need to move my hand because it was hurting her head. And I was like, no, honey, there's a giant goose egg in the back of your head. That's what's hurting your head. It's not my hand. But they came. They did struggle a little bit getting her out of the house, which I know for our neighbors that were here, if they're wondering, most of them know at this point that have asked, but if they were wondering why the ambulance and the fire truck were here for so long, it's because it was a monsoon outside. So they struggled trying to figure out how to get her out without slipping and falling, and they ended up having to walk around the house. It was a big ordeal. But we eventually got her to the hospital, unfortunately soaking wet, which we'll probably play into the story a little bit later, but we did get her there. Back for her second visit of the day at South Lake Hospital.
Yeah, and I do recall a few times too, I called my brother afterwards and said I was one of those patients because they had to put a neck brace on. And where it was resting was right where I hit my head. So I kept pulling on it and being like, get this off of me. It hurts my head. And I just remember telling them, do not give me Zofran because it just makes me more sick. And maybe like a week or so before, I actually had gone through and put in my phone all the all my past medical history. All my scans and the medicines that I'm allergic to, etc., which I remember telling you.
It was tremendously helpful.
Look in my phone.
Yeah, it was tremendously helpful to be able to have all that.
But I was in there for like a day and a half, just being observed, and had some additional CT scans of the spine and the head, which thankfully there was no internal bleeding, no broken bones. So just a really good headache that is still happening today. But was able to come home, obviously moving a little bit slower. We met with Dr. Kunta yesterday, which was Friday.
Yeah.
And I think throughout this entire journey, we've kind of been thinking, we don't really know what, right? A lot of information being thrown at you once again. And just the unknowns.
Yeah.
So I know when we first went in at one point, we kind of like, oh, well, maybe because of all the coughing, it's just COVID, right? Like, let's just chalk it up to COVID. It's 2020. But I did get a COVID test prior to the bone biopsy, and it's not COVID. So we know we have the results from the MRI, which pancreas is clear. We met with pulmonologist, and he wasn't overly concerned that it was lung cancer. So the bone biopsy did come back. It's really hard to say. The bone biopsy did come back, and my breast cancer is back, but this time it's in my bones and the lungs. So Dr. Kunta has confirmed that obviously it's stage 4 because now it's in other parts of your body. Right now he's talking with some doctors over at the Moffitt Center, which is here in Tampa, which is a cancer center. Mm-hmm. So it feels really good knowing that he's talking with other doctors, and other doctors are guiding for the best possible treatment options. My HER2 is still negative, and we can kind of explain what all of that is.
She can really explain what all this stuff is. I give her all the credit.
And then because I'm still ER/PR positive, which is good, they have talked about hormone therapy, potential chemo. Right now the doctors are kind of going back and forth because for bone, with it being in your bone, a lot of times hormone therapy is good enough, but the concern is the nodules within the lungs. Because there's a couple larger nodules on the right side, which is part of the reason why I've been coughing so much, because of the inflammation. So we left Friday in the office. I'm actually on another blood thinner medication, plus the shot that we're doing on a nightly basis. No. For the time being, and then once they tell us, we can stop the shot, but I think we'll probably continue that until the needles are gone. Yeah. So thankfully, Chris is really putting to use his in sickness and in health in our vows, because he's like literally sticking with me with a needle every single night. And you're doing a great job.
Thanks.
I know sometimes I'm not the best patient. But right now that's kind of, that is kind of where we're at right now. Obviously, Dr. Kunta was ready to start chemo next week, but the doctor at Moffitt, who deals with it a little bit more, was saying maybe hormone therapy first. So we're truly going to go with whatever they tell us. Yeah. We're going to do whatever we need to do. And they did say in 3 months, no matter what direction we go, another PET scan would be done, yeah. Which seems like that might be an ongoing thing until we beat this nasty disease once again. Yeah. So we know that obviously this is going to be a long road ahead of us once again, but we've shared with the girls what is happening. I know that's been a big question, what the girls know and don't know. And we're in this as a family, so
Good wave.
we are going to share with them what's going on, and keep them updated just as much as we will try to keep all of you as updated as possible on this journey with us.
So one question that I have been asked, and I know Lisa's been asked, and others that have been closer to us, is how can you help? Unfortunately, we've had some practice in handling cancer. And one of the things that we've tried to do this time around is we've kind of had to think about this, and some of the more difficult questions about it is, how do we keep our life normal? How do we keep our life as normal as we can for Lisa? How can we keep it as normal as we can for Janelle and for Jasmine? And then how can we keep it as normal for me as possible? Because the world is different right now. One advantage that we really do have and that we're kind of thankful for is COVID has caused us all to just be here all the time. So some of the stresses of the daily life are kind of not there anymore. There's not a stress to get to work or to drop the kids off at school or pick them up or rush home, do homework. I know these poor little girls are spending 8 hours doing virtual school every day, but they don't have homework. So that is a little bit of a trade-off, small benefit. So what we're really asking for people is we have created a GoFundMe page, which we'll put a link in the description, like a YouTuber. We're going to put a link in the description to our GoFundMe page where we're asking, if you would be willing to buy us dinner one night. Instead of doing that, add to the GoFundMe. If you'd be willing to take the girls somewhere or to an outing or come visit, instead of doing that, put on a GoFundMe. The main reason is, I think one thing, and I'll say this with you guys right here, one of the things that we got asked a lot before is what can we do with the girls to help? And I can't stress enough, and I can't stress how much joy they actually bring to our daily lives. And I think that was one thing through a lot of it we missed last time is, when people would take the J Squad away, it actually made our lives a little bit harder to know that we were missing out on the small joy that they have. And I've said to them through this whole thing is, girls, you don't have to do anything other than just be yourself. You being you is all we're really asking for. Even if you're arguing with me why you should put your clothes up, those things are beneficial to us. I know a lot of people have offered to bring food. One of the other reasons why we're kind of steering away from that, one is that our family runs on organized chaos. We are really good at making up a plan and then completely scrapping it at the last second to do whatever whim is right in front of us. It's really hard for us to plan dinner normally. We're normally making up what we're having for dinner as we're making up what we're having for dinner. So it's really hard, and it was in the past, and we truly appreciate everybody who reached out before. But one real struggle was, what do we want for dinner? We didn't really know that early enough to help people. Unfortunately, sometimes we put them in the same scramble that we're always in. The other thing is with COVID, we're trying to limit some of the unnecessary interactions. I know we've been to Disney, we've been to a couple of other places, but anything where we might truly put our family or friends at risk, or if Lisa's going through treatments that may potentially put her at risk, we're going to have to limit a lot more. So for anybody who wants to help, we just ask that you go to the GoFundMe page and support us there.
So once again, we just want to thank you all for being on our journey with us last time and being on this journey with us again. We're going to do everything we can, and we are going to fight like hell. Every day.
Girls, don't say bad words.
don't say bad words. But we just thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And we really do appreciate everything. And we will try to continue to keep everybody updated with what's going on. So thank you all for watching. And
take us out now, Bells.
How do you take us out?
Hasta la vista, baby.